would like to run through the roll because I have to do a little housekeeping with that. David Webster.
Present.
Joanna Hinton.
Here.
Diane Berry.
Here.
Linda Dunkett. Brandon Rutherford. Julia Fisher. Rochelle Hamilton. Larry Dotson. Joanna Friels.
Here.
Carl Wicklund.
Present.
Brenda Rose.
Here.
Felix. Say for Joey.
Yeah, something like that.
And Vanita Murphy.
Here.
Great. We have a forum. Reason I went through that is a little over half of our a little less than half of our members, by virtue of some things we did in terms of trying to stagger terms, have a term that's ending in June. So basically, the first question is, do you want to continue serving? And if you do, we're done. But if you would prefer not to continue serving, then we need to find a replacement for you. So if any of the 6 people on the bottom half of this sheet are not interested in continuing on the council, please let me know right now.
I can't see if I'm bottom or not.
Yeah, you're on the bottom.
You're bottom. You're on the bottom.
I want to stay.
I want to stay. I'll stay. I'll stay too.
Carl, you going to stay?
I would probably like to stay, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make any personal appearances because they've got me on a restricted driving with my
As
medication.
long as we can hear your beautiful voice, we'll be just fine.
Well, as long as my voice beautifier doesn't break, we're okay.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so we'll just assume that Felix wants to, we'll ask him, obviously, but
I'll ask him tomorrow.
we do have a question because those of us who've been around here a while, we haven't seen Rochelle since the very first meeting she attended. And I'll have to find out. I don't even know if she's on the Breathitt County Board anymore, but she hasn't been attending meetings, so we may need to think about a replacement for her. So the rest of you all that we didn't just talk about are good until next summer. So, all right, done with that. The other bit of personnel news for your information is tonight is my last local school board member advisory council meeting.
Yes, we know. Don't rub it in.
I'm sure Jody's been running it all over town and bad mouthing me.
You're angry.
I will be retiring June 30th. So when you all meet again in Bowling Green, I won't be with you. Jody will probably be here.
Find another ride home.
You're going to have to find another ride home, Joanna. I love you, but I don't think I'll drive up here to pick you up.
Yeah, that's fine. I can make Bowling Green.
All right, let me get this thing off my screen. All right, well, really glad that you all are here. Like I said, we have some really good stuff to talk about. We're going to lead off with our commissioner, our interim commissioner, Robin Kinney, which is always a good part of the agenda for you guys. So you can hear what she has to say and be ready, Commissioner. Our Oldham County representative says he has something he wants to talk about. So that's always scary when Larry Dodson has something he wants to talk about. So, and then after Commissioner Kinney gets done, we will hear from Don, who, as you know, is our legislative liaison at KDE, our government relations director, and he will try to make sense of what's going on over there this session, budgets and everything else that's going on. And then I'm real excited to have my friend Marty Park, who's the chief digital officer at KDE, to come and share about all the things we're discovering and learning about artificial intelligence and how it's some of the things that I've seen that are really helping out teachers. So,
David, who were you asking about Breathitt County School?
Rochelle Hamilton.
She's the board chair.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why she's taking a step back from this. And then if we have time, and it's just, I like to give a little update on some of the innovation work, but if we don't, that's not the most important thing. So I am going to turn it over to Robin and take it away.
Thank you so much, David. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, I would like to thank David for all his work on behalf of the Kentucky Department of Education. We are also very sad that he is leaving. It's a bittersweet moment always when someone retires that has really contributed so much to our agency. And David has certainly done an outstanding job with the work that he does with local school boards, but also with the work that he does in innovation, assisting school districts. So, there is a slight chance that David's paperwork could get lost somewhere along the way. Maybe.
Robin Marty said that he was going to figure out a way to make me fall back to like 12 years of service.
Well, it's not. You weren't born on leap year, were you? I mean, we could just say you're too young to retire, which you really are. But I did want to publicly acknowledge your efforts, David. You've just done such a great job for the department. It's been an absolute privilege for me to be able to get to know you and work with you too. And we'll have more times for celebration, but certainly wanted to say that in front of this group that you've worked so hard with. I'll also just kind of talk to your members just a little bit about what's going on at the Kentucky Department of Education right now. Probably the thing that is first and foremost on everyone's mind, of course, is the commissioner search. And we talked about that a little bit, I think, the last time I was with you, and gained some of your thoughts on the qualities that we would like to see in the next commissioner. Since that time, we have also done, in addition to talking to advisory groups like yours, we have done some other surveys that we've put out to various stakeholder groups, educators, including teachers and administrators, and also our own staff at the Kentucky Department of Education. So we've collected a lot of feedback and information. We also surveyed directly the General Assembly, members of the General Assembly. Because as you know, and we talked about the last time, this is the first time that the selection of our next commissioner will require a confirmation process by the Kentucky Senate. So we reached out to each of the members of the General Assembly and also asked for their thoughts. We put out the posting for the position. We have engaged a search firm named McPherson and Jacobson, and they are a national search firm that is helping us in these efforts. And our posting closed on February 16th. We have announced publicly that we received 15 applications for the commissioner position. And, I think different people have different views on whether that's a lot or it's not enough. But I keep reminding everyone, we just need one really good one. So we are very optimistic that we will get a great candidate for the next commissioner. So what do we do next? We've got the applications. Our search firm has been helping us kind of wade through those, making sure they meet minimum qualifications. And next steps actually happen quickly. Next week on March 7th and 8th, we will have our first round of interviews. And the Kentucky Board of Education created a subset of the board to act as the interview committee. And so the interview committee will tackle sort of the first round, and we'll interview candidates over those 2 days towards the goal of selecting finalists. And those finalists will be named publicly at some point after the 8th. Some of that just depends on how long it takes our interview committee to reach those decisions on a finalist, but it will happen, I would say, that week sometime. And then from that, we will go to the finalist will be interviewed by the full Board of Education, for full Kentucky Board of Education. And that will happen on March 18th and 19th. So again, a pretty aggressive turnaround. They will spend 2 days toward the selection and naming of the next commissioner. As you all know, after you pick your candidate, then you have to go through a negotiation process and you end up with a contract. And our contract will be contingent upon that confirmation by the Kentucky Senate. It is an aggressive timeline, but I think I had also shared with you last time that sort of the timeline is aggressive so that the Kentucky Senate has that opportunity to confirm before April 15th, which is sine die, the last day that the General Assembly will meet. So trying to get a name to them to allow them adequate time to review and consider, and really trying to get it to them before those veto days when people are less available. So trying to make sure that that happens timely. You can always keep up with what is going on with the commissioner search on our website. There is a 2023-2024 commissioner search webpage. So if you're ever interested in what's going on, you can go out there and check out the latest happenings on the commissioner search. I thought I would pause there for just a minute and see if anyone has any questions about sort of the path we're on in trying to select our next commissioner. Okay.
Anybody does, Robin.
Okay. So since you don't have any questions, make sure you got your fingers and toes crossed because we need all that good vibes coming to us to find the next great commissioner for the Commonwealth. Other things that have been going on, I'm really glad to see you have such a robust agenda today. And some of the things that you are going to learn about, we've also been sharing, of course, with KDE and superintendents and district staff. Brian is on to give a legislative update, and so you'll hear we are 2/3 of the way through the General Assembly session. So we're on the downslide here. It is the time when things get really busy and really it takes a lot of detailed attention to what's going on. So the staff at the Department of Education are very busy kind of reviewing bills, trying to understand and appreciate the impact that it would have on your local school districts, as well as on the department. But Brian is here and he'll walk you through some of those bills. Dr. Marty Park is with you, I see, and I'm also glad to see Dr. Park on your agenda. We have been talking at the department not only how AI is going to affect your local school districts, but also how it will impact our operations at the Kentucky Department of Education. So we are learning alongside you. We are also have the privilege of having Dr. Park, some of his team from OET, starting sort of education sessions with us, which I'm very appreciative for. And we are calling it work smarter, not harder. So we're going to explore the world of AI, those tools that are advantageous for some of our staff to use, and certainly how they can be advantageous in your classrooms with your teachers and your staff. And then I'm also glad to see that David will be talking about United We Learn. The other thing that has been going on is this month was Career and Technical Education Month, and we've been celebrating career and technical education all month long. It started off where we invited school districts as part of our Kentucky Board of Education meeting to come and do a showcase in our building, and had a lot of our staff had the opportunity to see the great performance-based work and hands-on learning that happen each and every day in career and technical education. There has been, according to the Office of Career and Technical Education, we're really seeing career and technical education flourish in the Commonwealth. We had an 11% increase in enrollment during school year 22-23 over the prior school year, and that's just amazing. Of course, we appreciate so much the generous funding that we received across the Commonwealth from the General Assembly in the last budget, and it's really allowed career and technical education to grow. 8 out of 10 Kentucky students had at least one career and technical education class. And I think back to when I was in school, which of course was a long time ago, but our students were very much on one of two paths. They did career and technical ed, or they did the academic instruction side. And we don't see that siloing anymore. We really see this blended learning opportunity where lots of our students are engaging in both sides and becoming very successful as a result of it. We had more than 4,500 students participate in internships or apprenticeships, which is always good, good for the workforce and good for our students. And then more than 25,000 students graduated with at least one post-secondary credentialing. So, and a significant impact that we are seeing career and technical education play in this space. And we are now getting ready to see in the career and technical education world sort of our student organization competitions that are coming up in the next couple of months. And if you have an opportunity to see any of those, whether it's DECA, Skills USA, FBLA, FFA, I'm going to leave somebody out, I know, HOSA, Education Rising, all of those great programs where our students have worked very, very hard, and now they're in the competition phase. The last plug-in that I'll put in for things going on is STLP, which is our Student Technology Leadership Program. And Dr. Park is very, very familiar with that. It is on March 27th at Rupp Arena. And in addition to David Cook retiring, our Associate Commissioner in the Office of Education Technology, Mr. David Couch, he's also announced his retirement. So this is going to be, we're losing two Davids at once, and we're not very happy about that. But of course, David Couch has had a very long term with the Kentucky Department of Education. He's been with us for 32 years and has led his organization and at the department to a leading organization across the country. And so his legacy has certainly been imprinted upon KDE and our local school districts. But if you do get a chance, I encourage you or to encourage others on your local school boards to support your STLP students in their statewide competition if they are attending. It is a wonderful, wonderful celebration of kids, again, doing that hands-on learning experience. And solving problems of their locality or their state or even the country. And it's 20,000 kids and adults coming to Rupp Arena, not for a basketball game, which we all love to do that too, but they're coming to show off their technology and their leadership skills. So I wanted to put a plug in for that. I am definitely going. I wouldn't miss it for the world. But it is amazing what these kids can do. If you don't get a chance to attend, I'm sure we will be putting out information following the STLP conference so you can see some of the great projects that are going on. I'm going to pause there because I know that we have at least one member who has some questions. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions I can. Sometimes I have to say, I don't really know the answer to that. But if I don't know the answer, I'd be happy to check with someone else at the department and get back to you. So let me turn the floor over to your members now, David.
I guess we'll let Larry go first since he has.
Okay. We'll let Larry go first.
Talk loud so we can.
One of the things that we're concerned about in Oldham County is money's earmarked for the literacy program currently is zero. It's more like an unfunded mandate. And the increased revenue we get from the state is planning on going towards salaries. Now, I know there's 3 programs we can choose from, but it's going to cost us between $800,000 and $1 million for it. Why can't we develop our own program instead of spending that $800,000 to $1 million?
Did you hear all that, Robin?
I've heard that, but let me ask a few questions so I make sure that I understand the question. Which literacy program are you talking about?
It's for the elementary kids.
Is this Read to Succeed
I don't know.
or Read to Achieve? We've got various literacy programs. I'm trying to just make sure that I know which one you're talking about.
He's saying there's 3 different ones they could choose from.
But we want to develop our own.
Oh.
To save that $800,000 to $1 million, so we can earmark the money that's coming, that we get out of this session towards teacher salaries. Because this is more like an unfunded mandate for us.
So this might be a question that I need Mickey Ray, our Chief Academic Officer, to help with. I'm happy to do that, but without me knowing exactly which program you're talking about, it's difficult for me to answer. I know that we have those literacy programs that say here, it almost sounds like Read to Achieve. So I can't tell if you've applied to get the funding or this is funding that's coming to everyone.
But we understand there is no funding for it.
So what the
Okay.
program we're talking about doesn't have any funding?
No, it's going to cost us
Oh.
$800,000.
I think I know what you're talking about now. So there was General Assembly, there was legislation passed that required for your early literacy, your earliest readers at a minimum, for you to adopt a high quality instructional resource, which would be your program that you would use. And it sounds like you haven't done that yet, and you are concerned about the cost of purchasing that. Am I getting the question right now?
That's right.
Okay. And your question is, why can't you do your own so that you can save the money that we hope is coming through this session's General Assembly to do your raises?
Exactly.
Okay. So I think the bill required a high quality instructional resource. I think the question that we need to ask Mickey Ray, our Chief Academic Officer, is can you, as your district, develop a high quality instructional resource and then use that? Is that a fair characterization of your question?
Hey, we got turned down. Oh, okay.
Oh, you got turned down. Okay. So that's the rest of the story. Okay. So you got turned down. And did you ask that of Mickey Ray in the Office of Teaching and Learning?
I don't know who our superintendent asked.
Okay. So let me do this, Larry. Since you've already asked and turned down, let me go back to find out who turned you down and get more information on the why.
That'll work.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me do that.
We'll take a breath, man, because Larry got his question.
That wasn't that bad.
It wasn't.
No.
Now, if you want me to get on Seek,
No. We're going to have a Seekless conversation today, Larry.
I talk about Seek every day.
Yeah, but you don't want to talk about it with Larry Dodson. And Oldham County. That's your problem right there.
We send you all we can.
we're at the bottom.
Oh,
Here you go.
no, we don't know that.
Any other questions
I'm through.
while we have Robin with us? Anything that other people want to talk about that maybe Brian or Marty won't be discussing? Nothing? Oh, awful quiet.
They
What's-
are awfully quiet. The last time I was with them, they kind of warmed up as the meeting went on. So maybe that will happen. I'm going to stay on the line. I can stay until about 7. So I just want to kind of stay and listen in and learn along with you. But if you think of a question during this time, I'm happy to see if I can answer.
Thank you, Robin, so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We're going to take a little liberty here and reverse a couple of items on the agenda. Brian asked us if he could go a little bit later in the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and jump to Dr. Marty Park, our Chief Digital Officer at KDE, and
I got
you
it.
see, he took control of my computer.
Commissioner Kenny said, it's just data.
It's just data.
So I'm sure there's years of service.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you today. There's a lot of conversations that we can definitely get into around education technology, which is my area that I love to stay in. I'm a former classroom teacher as well as a district administrator. I was in schools and districts for quite some time, and I've been at the Department of Ed now for about 15 years. And so I like to get involved in, as our Chief Digital Officer, the technologies. Certainly they're super important to ensure that they're efficient, they're working the way they need to work for all of us and our students and teachers. But I really hone in the learning phase when using technologies for learning and school efficiency. That's what we're all about. We never do technology for technology's sake. We're all about using technologies the right way. So, and I love speaking with school board members, and I've worked with school boards quite a bit, whether it's a very specific policy kind of area or something very broad and conceptual. And so I'm glad to be here. Tonight's topic, obviously, that David shared is wrapped around artificial intelligence. We have a lot going on in the artificial intelligence space. And there's a lot of conversations that we need to help guide. All of us as leaders need to help guide, and it's important. So step one that I always love to start with is spelling AI. So I'm nailing that pretty good. But artificial intelligence has been around for a really long time. I really like to think about it especially from a decision-making or policy-making perspective, as AI as a work and learning partner. That is exactly the right positioning for us in K-12. How can we use and leverage artificial intelligence in our work and as we're learning as a partner? And that's kind of the key. I'll kind of dive in on a couple of points there. I'll try to be pretty tight on the message here. Definitely, it's a discussion. It's really the big part. So I like to ask artificial intelligence as my partner to say, how can you help me? How can you help me fill in the blank? How can you help me make something, create something, design something? And that's what artificial intelligence can do for us today. And so I've put together just a few pieces. I know just to help keep the conversation pointed. Inside of what we refer to as our education technology plan statewide, which is statutorily required that we have a plan, which is great for us. And it's called our KETS master plan, the Kentucky Education Technology System. So inside of our master plan, one of our big areas in our brand new KETS master plan, which completely goes into effect on the 5th, March 5th. So it's gone all the way through the legislative cycle, starting with our Kentucky Board of Education, all the way through the legislative cycle. But one of this big statement for us that becomes very important, it's an area of emphasis for us through the next 6 years, is to encourage, engage, and empower the safe, secure, and responsible uses of artificial intelligence. That's a big statement, but all of those pieces and parts are very important. So we're using artificial intelligence in safe, secure, and responsible ways for school efficiencies, but also in the learning space for teachers and students. And that's super important. And we want to make sure, this is the key point, that humans remain, so all of us as leaders, teachers, remain in the loop of artificial intelligence. We never want to, it's not a Roomba, right? Does anyone have a Roomba, by the way? So you do. Do you love it? Oh, yeah. And have you ever come home and found it just kind of, banging its head up against the wall? No, I find it stuck though. Stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. So we never want to set it and forget it. And that's really important. So I like the metaphor of a Roomba fits, because a Roomba is really cool and it does a lot of great things for us, but not without intervention and staying in the middle of what that is supposed to do for us. So we released a guidance brief. And if you have a pen, and by the way, David, make sure everyone has this if you want it, just so you can take it with you, use it back home and with other school board members. Your school district leaders have this already. And so we've developed and published an artificial intelligence guidance group that we think is pretty important. We've done this in partnership with our school district leaders as well, specifically your education technology leaders, your chief information officers. And that's at KETS.news. So KETS stands for Kentucky Education Technology System. .news/AI. So it's a really short URL. And that brief targets these areas that I mentioned. I think in the conversations wrapped around artificial intelligence, it's important to like focus in on the things that make sense and reducing the complexities. And so we found that in some really hard conversations, just change the terminology of artificial intelligence and call it emerging technologies, because that's what it is. Artificial intelligence has been around for a really long time. The difference today is that there are new interfaces that we all can interact with AI in new ways. As just me as an average person, I can interact with artificial intelligence in a way that I've never been able to do before. So the difference is the emerging technologies and the apps and the interfaces that we have access to. So if we think about it as emerging technologies, then the policies that we already have in place are very helpful. If we think about it as something completely new and totally different, then we get into a space of trying to design for a future that we're not sure of. And so we want to try to stay pretty clear. So breaking it down, just the idea of what does it mean to encourage? What does it mean to engage? From a school board level, from a district leadership level, what does it mean to empower with these emerging technologies? Focusing in on the safe, secure, and responsible. That is the key for us as we move forward. We never want to be reckless at all. Safe, secure, and responsible. Focusing on the why. School efficiency. They're a great space as a partner where artificial intelligence can help us in school efficiency. Think bus routing. Think of those, efficiency moves that we make. And then staying in the middle. So humans, us as adults and leaders, students and teachers, staying in the middle of those emerging technologies and not treating it like a Roomba that's magically going to not only vacuum my floors, but maybe it's going to wash my dishes and other things that we know it can't do without us. And so when we look across the country and actually globally and how folks are kind of adopting policy, procedure, there's a couple, what I've kind of pulled out is 4 main buckets that folks are fitting in from a belief system perspective. So prohibiting use. So on the far side, just shut it all down, block it, no one touch it. You're prohibited from using anything to do with artificial intelligence. Don't believe that's a winning proposition at all. On the other end of the spectrum is wide open, no guardrails or bumper lanes. Everyone can do anything. And that also is not a winning proposition as well. And so the truth is in the middle somewhere. So from a kind of a spectrum perspective, thoughtful and intentional use and policy becomes really important. So restricted use of artificial intelligence is a space where some of our school districts are getting into pretty quickly to say a few people can use these things, that kind of approach. So prohibited with a little bit of exception. So if you have a specific need with this specific kind of task, then maybe you're restricted use of artificial intelligence. Then there's an approach that we're seeing as requested use. So when you need to do something, you can request special permissions to use those artificial intelligence tools. That's helpful for some. Where we see as a really nice space is requested use for some specific artificial intelligence, but curated and safe exploration of tools or resources that have already been vetted and have already been deemed that they're safe, secure, and responsible. So that's very helpful for all of us. What we also know is that from a school district perspective, that our students, teachers, community members, all of us have unfettered personal access to everything. And so it's really about learning when and where and what and how to interact safely becomes the most important tool of all. And that's the learning part. That's the, kind of teaching and learning. So, so we get into this idea of considerations that are very important when we're thinking about policy and we're thinking about guiding in the right way. I like to think about it as do's instead of thinking about it as don'ts. It's very helpful to think about what do we do versus a list of don'ts. And so I think that's important. So we want to always pause and ask these questions. So consideration number one that we're coaching a lot of is, am I feeding any sensitive or personal information or data into artificial intelligence that it can use or share with unauthorized people in the future? So that's a key question. And it's all about emerging technologies anyway, where data that we have access to that may be sensitive, whether we're school board members, whether we're school leader, principal, assistant principal, we have personal and sensitive data access to. And what are we doing with those data is very, very important for us to pause and consider. We never want to feed any sensitive or personal data or information into an artificial intelligence tool, especially if we don't have a relationship with that tool or that partner or that vendor. And so that's consideration number one. Consideration number two is the AI part of an enterprise ecosystem? Is it some third-party tool that's offered to someone that we may not be familiar with? And like I said, do we have a relationship with that? And then a couple of examples that I'll share as we kind of wrap this into, try to put a bow on before we get into like questions you might have is, all of our school districts in Kentucky, and we do a lot of things from an equity perspective in terms of education technology and in general teaching and learning. And so we know for sure the technologies that every school district has access to. Some of those are local decisions and some are statewide shared services. So for example, we provide from the KDU, we provide internet to every school district. So every one of our schools, public schools, have access to the internet, right? That's very important. So when we think about access and opportunity, that's a statewide shared service. We also have Office 365 and Google Workspace. So your school district email, is it Google? So, yep. Or is it Microsoft? So those are basic enterprise tools that every school district has access to. Those tools already leverage artificial intelligence, and they have for quite some time. And they're doing some things that help us in those systems, but those are enterprise systems that we have agreements with and relationships with. So we have a trust with those companies. So does the AI bot, the third consideration is, does the AI bot want me to give it permissions to do things with my account information? So this is a real example that we had at the Department of Education where an artificial intelligence bot, when one of our team members joined a meeting that was in another agency, the bot showed up and said, hey, I can give you this great summary of this meeting that's going to help you later. And the AI will do that for you instead of you taking notes. But in order to do that, you have to give me permissions to your account. But it asked it in a way that was very tricky. And so with a couple clicks, that AI tool took over some permissions and gave not just access to that account, but also access to other people that person worked with through other meetings. And so these are very malicious kind of thing in general. And they act kind of like a virus sometimes. And so if an AI tool says, will you give me all the permissions to your account, we want to say no. But that's a consideration. Is the tool free? So there are today thousands of artificial intelligence interfaces that are absolutely free to use. So if it's free, the consideration and coaching point for all of us as leaders, but also for our students and teachers, is if it's free, then you're the payment. It wants your information or your interactions or your connections so that it can do more in different things. Oftentimes that's considered like a freemium tool. So there's a free version and then there's a paid for version. And so it gets kind of tricky sometimes. The next consideration that we're coaching on is the product generated from the AI ethical to use or share? So today, generative artificial intelligence can help you make or create something new that you didn't have to do on your own. But as a partner, it created a picture or a document or a scoring rubric, something like that. And then we pause and ask the question, is it ethical to use that? Some of the tools create images of us. They can create an image of me at a location that I've never been to. Is it ethical then for you to generate that and post it somewhere? No, it's not. Because that would be trickeration, as my 5-year-old would say. So can AI's response be shared as is, or does it need to be reviewed first? And so this is important because what we know today with artificial intelligence is that it can create hallucinations. It can pretend that something is real and it's not. There's unintended biases that artificial intelligence tools can start to enter. And so we want to pause and consider that. And then final consideration that is in that guidance brief is, have I asked somebody, a knowledgeable person, maybe it's a manager of mine, maybe it's a supervisor, whether my use of artificial intelligence is appropriate for a task. So for example, artificial intelligence can help me create a job description. So I might ask David Couch, who, as Commissioner Kenny mentioned, is retiring soon. David, what would your job description look like? Do you care if we use AI to kind of think about that as a partner? And because he's retiring, he has indicated, no, that'd be a great use of AI in that space. So that's just a quick example. So just to zoom in on one specific point, and this is something that we've coached and worked inside of Team KDE on, but it's very similar inside of our school districts, is if that point about if I give the AI my permissions to bring it home, inside of school districts, we do a lot of automated door access with our ID badges and things like that. That technology makes sense and it works really well. But there's an opportunity with, if you take my actual badge, which I have in my pocket, you can get into any door that I'm allowed to get inside of our office building, right? That's the same in schools. So to make it real is if I give an artificial intelligence application my permissions, then that application can sometimes go into my email and do things, send emails for me, whether I wanted it to or not, unintended kind of consequences. So we use that example quite often. So I thought it would be fun just to play a quick game. We've done this with other large groups, with groups 200, 300 in size, and it becomes pretty fun to think about if it's real or is it AI. And so I'm going to ask a couple questions and just play along. If you don't want to, then sorry, you don't have to. But so is it real or AI? We were able to pull, as Commissioner Kenny mentioned, the Student Technology Leadership Program is one of the programs that I get to wrap my arms tightly around and love it. It's student learning demonstration using technologies maybe like you've never seen before. En masse, 60,000 students that create digital products all year long. And so we've pulled from our archives here. So this is just some examples. So number one, is this real or is it AI? This is round one. This is a basic landscape photo. Is this real or AI? Did one of our students get the opportunity to take this photo while on a trip? Or is this artificial intelligence created by just typing a prompt? Say real. You say real. Anyone say AI? You say AI. Okay.
AI.
AI. Okay. This, in fact, is AI. So this is AI. Looks very real, but through text prompt, create me an image of, and then a very basic prompt of this landscape. And this is a new image, has never been painted, created, drawn, photo ever.
Could you say put me in that picture? Could it do it?
So there are AI tools that can do that.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. So round two, is this real or AI? Pretty basic. So with your iPhone, there's a portrait option where I can blur out some background things. So is this real or AI?
Real.
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 Real. So the prompt would be a spring field with daisies, right? So that would be create that image. This is AI.
Okay.
And this was created in less than 3 seconds.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Next, round three. It's pretty basic. This is the story behind this. Or maybe tricky. Is it real or AI? You think AI?
Yeah, there's like roads that look like feet.
Okay. Anyone think real?
I think real.
I think real is real.
Real.
Okay.
Real.
This is real.
Real.
This is in fact real. So the point is you can start to come up with examples of why we might think that's AI, but in fact it's really hard to tell today. So round four, this is one I love. Is this real or AI? This is, by the way, this is the creation of the internet, behind the scenes, rare behind the scenes footage.
So, yeah.
You think it's AI?
Yeah.
Okay. What gave it away?
Couches in the front of the picture.
So
It looks like Great Brady.
We'll tell him you said that.
So this image to the Greg Brady to the left, in fact, is David Couch. And his mother gave us this photo without him knowing at some point. This was from the 70s. So this is actually this is both real and AI. So this is an example where some of this photo is generated from a text prompt, and then to the point that you were asking, then we also dropped in some real photos. I'm pretty sure Oprah had something to do with the creation of the internet.
Start saying that looks like Oprah.
And so that's a good example. This is the last one that I wanted to share. This is, I think we're at round 5 here. Is this real or AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So this actually it's AI. And this is a good story because in one of our student demonstration products, it's a creative digital arts competition. And this was submitted by a student. But the student didn't submit it directly. The student had to actually submit it through the teacher. So the teacher had to submit it and had to match it to a scoring rubric. So this is a good story. The narrative around this is a really interesting conversation because there were a couple indicators that this felt like it was AI. For example, if you zoom in on the eagle at the top, it turns out that eagles only have 2 wings and not 3.
Yeah.
So the AI missed that a little bit. But other than that, it's kind of hard to tell. And so here's the point from a learning perspective. I get to teach some graduate courses at the University of Kentucky as well. One of the courses is kind of wrapped around artificial intelligence and interactive systems. And the point, we had this huge discussion the other night about, well, how do you know if it's real or not? And inside of our classrooms, in terms of learning products, it's about the process and the conversation that comes with it. And so through conversation with the student said, no, this is real. I made this. I used my iPhone 14 and I had an app and I drew it on the phone. And so that's interesting, right? And so the teacher said, no, this is real. The student created it, used the app. Well, what app was it? Can you talk us through that app and what the app was? Well, I actually used it once, created that, and then I deleted the app. I can't remember what the app was. Okay, well, no sweat. Talk us through how you drew that. And so the teacher went back and said, how'd you draw it? Well, I used, and so the teacher was like, no, wait a second. Did you use your finger to draw all that? Because that's amazing, you know? And as it turns out, the teacher didn't realize that it was artificial intelligence. But the student had used an artificial intelligence tool and in 5 seconds made this picture and submitted it to compete in a competition where everyone else had actually drawn by hand in a digital application. But the point that the student learned is the conversation through the learning process was actually the most important.
In
Creative
other words,
use-
he cheated.
well, so one could say that. One could say
Cheated.
cheating.
It's a version of plagiarism.
Yeah. So what
He
we
cheated.
yeah, in this case, yes, absolutely. But we also permit, in a lot of cases, as we move forward, AI as a partner and artificial intelligence in many cases as inspiration. And that's a real thing. That is not cheating. But if you present that you created something that, in fact, a bot did or an app, then that's cheating, right? That's not the intent of that task or that product. And so it's really about that process.
But I think, Marty, one of the things that I think is really interesting about what you just said right at the end there is, let's say Diane is not an artist, but Diane has an extremely vivid description of a scene or of a thing she wants to create, but she physically doesn't have the talent. So the question will start to become is, if she goes to the AI tool and says, this is what I want to create, and is very vivid about what you want to create, and the tool creates it for you, you still have some part of the creation of as a partner in that work. So that's a difference than straight up cheating. That's just, I don't know how to do that, but I have this great idea and I need somebody to help me. And I don't have a friend who can help me. So.
And that is exactly the approach. AI as a partner in work and learning. Can you help me do better at my skill, my task? And so what we're talking about is a new set of skills. And it absolutely is future state skills that we're going to be teaching and learning. These skills are wrapped inside of our academic standards already in many cases. And so it's important for us. So you might be leveraging artificial intelligence already today and you don't know it. If you have one of these, then your phone is doing a lot of artificial intelligence already. Again, you may not be directly interfacing with it, but it's doing it. And so that's important for us. So Google Apps, Office 365 applications, email, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all incorporate artificial intelligence features already. So it's not this way far out scary thing. It's now how can I leverage those to do better and be better at what I'm trying to do. So things like grammar suggestions and writing styles, that's already a thing that's very helpful, and that's not cheating, unless the task is to take pen and paper and write something. And then obviously that would be an approach. And so getting help with grammar and writing style is important. Data insights and visualization. These tools already do this for us that are very helpful. Not on their own though. It's not a Roomba. Can't set it, forget it. We got to be involved in it. Email translation and transcription. David had up on the screen right when the meeting started, the recording. You saw artificial intelligence is taking into his microphone and then transcribing exactly what we're talking about today. And so that a human, that used to be a job, right? That used to be a job that we did. So that is a great use of artificial intelligence by a tool that we have our trust in already. Again, someone would then read that, ensure that there's not a missing word or something incorrect, but a part in the word. Image recognition and text interaction or extraction. I had a group in one of our meeting rooms the other day, and we were working through a complex task, and we were on the whiteboard and we created a chart, and I was meant to drop it in here just so you can see it, but I quickly took a picture of it and then let artificial intelligence actually turn that into a data table. So that I didn't have to do that on my own, and 15 seconds and it jumped out. And so searches online and web browsers already using artificial intelligence. And so as a partner, just some use cases that we're seeing inside of our schools, inside of the Department of Ed. And by the way, all of those images up there were generated in 15 seconds or less using an AI tool. Because I had it in my mind, that prompt that created those images, then I was a partner in that work. And so it was still me involved. AI for creating charts and images. I mentioned that. Creating scoring rubrics and putting those in table format. I mentioned that. Analysis of participant satisfaction. So if we do a survey of some sort, then can I get a quick analysis or summary of those 100 responses to that survey question? We have that as an example. Help responses to a parent email. I know the general response that I want to make, but an artificial intelligence tool can help you craft that. And then you wouldn't just send it. You would read it, take that in, reflect on that. Is that exactly how I want to say it? And ask the tool to maybe generate something else, or just edit it in your own words, but using maybe that format. Create a newsletter, creating job description, interview questions, and the scoring that goes with that. That's a very simple task today with generative AI. Creating a schedule template or maybe a meeting or an event. I'm going to have 300 people. I'm going to have 30 breakout sessions. Can you create a meeting matrix or a session matrix for me? Those tasks. Predict possible stakeholder responses. That's helpful. Creating images based on prompts. We've used those. So the tools that we're using today that we know and trust, we're asking some tools from Microsoft called Copilot. You already have access to Copilot as well inside your school district accounts. Copilot is very helpful. It is safe and secure. Microsoft does not share your data or information that you use with your school district account. Google Workspace has a new AI tool called Gemini, and it also does not share your information or data. So that's a tool that we feel is very safe. And then we also have Adobe Creative Cloud that we use at the Department of Ed. Many school districts use Adobe Creative Cloud as well. The Adobe Express tool is a great tool for creating images. I'm not really a great artist. I think I am sometimes, but I'm not. And so using Adobe Express to create some visuals that I want to use in a document or in a presentation is very helpful. Our students are very comfortable with that today as well. So David, I thought that would be a good spot to really open up questions about these emerging technologies. I'm very interested. One school board member has already mentioned to me that it would be great if we could help partner with KSBA and maybe some potential policy considerations. Definitely, that is absolutely where we want to be as well. My driver there, though, is that we already have policy in place on how we handle data in a safe, secure, and responsible way. So if the emerging technology is about what we do with the data, we already have law policy in place for that. But if we want to say something specific about, again, to say secure and responsible uses of artificial intelligence, then we should do that, and we should feel good about it. So, any thoughts or questions, or just generally, are you talking about AI much, or is this kind of an introduction for you?
It's a straight up introduction for me. It's awesome. I mean, just like the conversation we had before everyone got in here, about how the teachers are teaching and how students are learning now. It's definitely going to be harder for those teachers that are 5 to 10 years retiring. That's big.
Marty, what is it we always say about AI replacing teachers?
Yes, we don't believe that AI will replace teachers. However, teachers who learn to use AI in an awesome way will replace teachers who don't. And so, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I'm an educator, and we're at my school district. We're really starting to learn about AI. And what I think is so important, and I know this is not a novel thing that I'm saying, but the importance of PD for teachers at each different level. Because AI is I teach first grade. That's going to look a whole different.
I taught first grade, by the way.
The best, right?
The best.
So it's a whole different story for first grade, even fourth grade. I mean, those are big. So I think that's as with anything with teachers. I think you need that support, that PD to help people feel comfortable, give them ideas of what tools there are. Because I think teachers are always really wanting to learn.
Yeah.
So if you give them what they need to learn, then they're excited and ready to do it, ready to try. to
And I think
incorporate.
you've already talked about it, Marty. I think, Julia, that one of the things that excites me about AI for teachers is teachers have so much on their plate anyway. And they're looking for the ways that AI can help them do their job. And the two greatest ways I see it is as a tool to help teachers manage their work. And for students, it's a tutoring tool. It's a way for teachers to have to be able to spend actually more time with kids doing feedback than they could on their own, because they can have the tool help those kids work on their homework and see things and check them and say, you didn't do that right, or you didn't do that right, or
The efficiency build-ins
Yeah.
for, for me as a teacher to be able to spend the best time that I have with students while potentially letting some technologies do some things that it's capable of doing. An example, and I was thinking about reading diagnostic, mentioned read to achieve to sustain. We're unpacking that a bit, and one of the improved tools uses Mira Learning, uses artificial intelligence to listen to students read, and then give teacher by listening, by a student reading into, then give the breakdown in those reading guides. And so that can be helpful, so that you then can work individually or one-on-one and greater time in the day, so giving time back. But those are there. We want to be careful. We want to be careful about that. We would never release, tools or something in a classroom with kids unless there's evidence back up that's helpful, that we feel comfortable with it through professional learning. I'll mention, we do believe in a coaching model very extensively. So one of the other programs that I work is our Digital Learning Coach Network. And so the people side of what we do in education technology is the most important part of what. So if we don't have what we refer to as digital learning coaches, but if we don't have people working directly with teachers to implement technologies in the right ways, then really we just bought a bunch of stuff just hoping that it works, right? And so the implementation strategies, we now have over 700 digital learning coaches across the state that are working inside schools and districts, employed by our schools and districts, that are working hand in hand with the teachers. That's implementation line. That's exactly where that coaching model works. And that's important for the investment.
take one more question. I've got to move on to Mr. Terry because I don't want to lose him to look.
I'll just say, this winter, so we farm full time. I have a greenhouse business. I signed up for a Zoom that I didn't get to join that was talking to independent garden center owners about how to use AI for advertising, and the Proven Winners brand put it on because they want us to know how to do it. So I kind of look at it that we're not teaching our kids how to use it the right way. Then when they come to me as an employer, they're doing, it's a tool that they can grow with and use. And that we're all behind, but that 5 years from now, when my sophomore in high school comes out, and she can help me with these things because she's already learned.
Great.
Hey, this is Carl, can I make a quick comment?
Of course.
I'm concerned with, from the board standpoint, that AI is going to change a lot of thinking and thought processes for people, because it's going to require forward thinking in real time, which we don't do much of right now. Am I wrong, or am I correct?
I don't know if we have enough time to talk about that one, Carl.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. We don't have to talk about it tonight. We'll talk about it later.
Okay. I appreciate the question, though.
He is right,
No.
because to me, it makes a student feel, well, I've just got to know how to do this, and I don't have to do anything much more. That's my concern with it.
Yeah.
It makes a student, to me, lazy. It makes adults lazy,
Good, absolutely.
because somebody else does the work. you might think about it, but the other one's going, well, I'll just plug this in and, I got it.
And you're exactly right. And so it comes down to learning design, and it comes down to, we've said this for a long time, and it's not different than when we all first, right? And we always say this, but it's important in this case, is if a student can Google a response to a question, get the answer, it's the wrong question. And so from a learning design perspective, it's all about what are we asking our students to do? What are we, from all the way through feedback, learning, what are we measuring impact with? So I think it's important to your point, if it's just about regurgitating an answer to a basic question or turning a document in and never like really caring about what that document says,
That's right.
then that's not only a problem with making the learner lazy, but it's also a problem with what we've designed or asked as a teacher to do. And I think that's an important part of it.
That's a great place to stop. Dr. Park, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I want to quickly shift over. Brian, are you there?
I am.
All right.
All right, let me see if I can. Sorry, I'm trying to share my slides here.
There we go.
All right, can you all see them? Still blinking on my end. There it goes. All right, so good evening. Today was day 41 of the 60-day legislative session, so a little over 2/3 of the way done. So they'll be in session pretty much every day weekly until the end of March, and then they will go into what's called veto days, and the governor will have a chance to take action on any bills that have reached his desk. As I'm sure you know, he can sign them into law, he can let them become law without his signature, or he can veto them. The General Assembly will return for the final 2 days of the session on, I think, April 12th and Friday the 12th, and then Monday the 15th. Kind of a quirk of the calendar this year. For the final 2 days, where they will essentially just override any vetoes that he does with a simple majority vote in each chamber. They can still send him legislation those days. However, if he were to veto it, they can't overturn it because they'll be out of time. So it's largely symbolic, and that doesn't happen too often. So you'll see some links there for the session calendar, although I think from here on out, it's pretty straightforward. And then if you want to watch any of the committees, particularly the education committees and the A&R committees might be of interest. The usually are streamed on KET's website. Occasionally they will get kicked over to the LRC YouTube page, especially late in the session when we've got lots of committees meeting all at the same time. And then the budget process has really gotten wonky the last 2 sessions now. So if you'll remember back in 2022, the House dropped House Bill 1 as the budget bill, which was unusual. And they did it before the governor introduced his proposal in mid-January, which was also very unusual. Well, this year, the governor tried to get out ahead of the House. So he unveiled his budget proposal in late December via a Facebook event. That got filed as House Bill 114 and won't go anywhere. The House version is House Bill 6, and that's over in the Senate now. I don't know that we will see a Senate version until mid-March, so they're not going to be in any particular hurry. And then once they do pass it out of the Senate, they'll go to a conference committee and maybe a free conference committee to hammer out the final one that they'll send to the governor. And whatever they send to the governor will be the final budget, because they'll overturn any other vetoes with a simple majority vote. And they usually do those in bulk. So he does have line item veto power in the budget, but they can just override them. So that's kind of the quick version of what's left in the session. The next, until the end of March is kind of the big crunch time. So it'll be exciting. So yesterday was the last day for new bills in the Senate. Monday was the last day for new bills in the House. So we have a little over 1,200 bills that have been filed. That's a bunch. We have about 250 bills on the bill tracker that we have at the office. So a lot of legislation pertaining to education. So clearly not going to hit all the bills tonight. So we'll just try to hit some highlights. If you have any you want to talk about, we can. The only thing that I'll add that I'm sure you all are aware of is that there are a number of so-called shell bills or mule bills. So these are bills that usually say something to the effect of an act pertaining to education as the title, and then they have some sort of gender neutral change in language as the body. They're really just empty bill jackets that can then be stuffed with anything relating to education at a later date. There are a lot of them out there. They usually don't go anywhere, but that is a vehicle whereby new legislation can get introduced later in the session, even after the filing deadlines have passed. So just be aware of that. All right, let's talk about some bills. All right, so as I'm sure you all are aware, they're almost certainly going to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November related to education funding. Right now, the Constitution is pretty strict, and they've tried a few different times to get funding passed for vouchers or charters, and it's been struck down every time. So this time they're going to try to put a constitutional amendment that would allow dollars to flow to, well, those so they're public, but not in the traditional sense. Just as a reminder, there's a bunch of other constitutional amendments floating out there this year. They can put 4 on the ballot at one time, and they might actually have 4 this year because there's a bunch out there. A bunch of the other ones relate to property taxes. Matt Ross and Che and the rest of OFO have been taking a look at those. We haven't seen anything right now that we think would really impact districts, but you might just want to be aware that there's a bunch of bills out there relating to property tax in one form or fashion, including a couple of constitutional amendments. All right, so Senate Bill 2 started over in the House. Actually, if you look at House Bill 32, that's the original version. And then Max Wise has filed Senate Bill 2 in the Senate. This has a lot of language related to school guardians, essentially a stopgap measure for districts that can't find SROs. And then there's also a big chunk in there about student mental health, especially as it relates to trauma. We got the chance to weigh in on this one and are pretty happy with where it is and excited that it's Senate Bill 2. So that's one we're definitely happy about. Senate Bill 11's one of a couple of bills that we'll talk about that's related to kind of the juvenile justice world. This one is trying to essentially speed up the process for when a district would be notified when a student gets charged with a serious offense, for example. So right now, I guess there can be a fairly significant lag in when a student is charged with some sort of serious offense outside of school and when the district is notified. And so SB 11 is trying to close that time frame so that districts are notified much quicker when something serious happens with one of their students, especially outside of the school system. So Senate Bill 52 is very topical considering Marty's discussion. So I don't think this bill is going to go anywhere this year, but I do think that AI will continue to be a big topic of conversation as it relates to education throughout the interim. And I would not be surprised if we see a bill or multiple bills start to crop up in the coming sessions addressing kind of some of the issues that Marty touched on tonight. So Senate Bill 52 is probably the first of many AI bills to come. So I've just been mentioning that to people to put that on the radar. As I'm sure you all have heard, there was lots of talk heading into the session about DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and how that might be addressed during the session. Most of what's been done so far has been focused on post-secondary institutions, not so much on the secondary schools. Senate Bill 93 is one of the ones out there that is focused on secondary institutions. Hasn't really started to move yet. Haven't heard a lot about it, but I think if they're going to move one, this is one to watch. there's a bunch of bills related to transportation of students, and that's all related to issues that have been happening this year in certain districts. So not surprised that we're seeing those bills. Senate Bill 92 is one of them. I think there's some House versions that are moving that we'll talk about later. There are a number of bills related to weapons on school grounds that you all need to be aware of if you have not started following those. There are a number of them, and I haven't really heard how much appetite there is to do something with any of them, but there was an incident, I believe, in Anderson County that I think is sparking some of the conversation. So just be aware that those are out there in the event that something starts to move. There's also several bills related to lobbying efforts by public entities, such as school districts. Again, not clear if they'll end up moving one of these bills, but there's a number of them out there, all slightly different. You see SB 120 is one of them there. Likewise, once again, a number of vaccine requirement bills that are out there. So just we'll keep monitoring those. I don't know that the department will weigh in because we as a department don't set those vaccination guidelines. Senate Bill 165 is one that's kind of interesting. I heard a little bit of talk about this during the interim about using SSNs as an identifier for students and getting away from that. This is the first bill that I've seen that would do that. I don't know that it'll move this year, but I do think it's something that districts might want to start thinking about and putting on the radar. So Senate Bills 169, 170, and 171 are all filed by the same sponsor, all addressing, again, issues that have been happening in a district this year. Not sure what the appetite is to move any of these. The recall of a local board member, we have let people know the original version was not good. It would have allowed a small minority of folks to recall a member. So yeah, it would cause a lot of problems. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do in this space, but I think that given the issues that have happened in the district this year, they're probably going to try to do something. I'm just not sure what yet. So Senate Bill 192, along with House Bill 499, are two bills, are the same bill. This is something that our Office of Career and Technical Education has been working on, initially with Senator Givens and now also with Representative McCool. So if you'll remember back in 2022, the Assembly basically doubled the amount of CTE funding they made available to districts. And with that, OCTE for the first time was able to equalize funding across locations. So you no longer had a welding student at an ATC being funded at a different rate than at a LAVEC versus somebody at a local high school that maybe wasn't funded at all. So that investment in CTE got that part done. And these bills are trying to change the distribution formula going forward so that we have essentially 60% of the money is based on FTE and 40% is based on 4 different indicators of high quality CTE programming that I cannot remember off the top of my head. One of them is concentrator status, I think. One of them is credential completion or licensure. And there's a couple others. So that's what it's trying to do. CTE funding does go up and down based on FTE now. It will continue to change a little bit in the future. So there's going to be some winners and losers. But in our opinion, this would be very good for CTE. It would encourage districts and schools to be focused on those high quality indicators of strong CTE programming. So hopefully we'll see these bills move. Our understanding was the sponsors had a conversation and 499 was going to be the one to move over to the Senate. It got out of education and promptly got reassigned to A&R. So we'll see what's happened with that one. Senate Bill 210 is one you need to look at if you have not. If you'll remember House Bill 563 from a few sessions ago, that was the non-resident enrollment bill. That bill said that districts need to have a policy on non-resident enrollment, non-resident enrollment. So the department stance was districts couldn't really just say, we don't have a non-resident enrollment policy, or we don't enroll non-resident students. other entities said otherwise, so districts have been saying that. This bill says that you essentially have, among some other things, it's got a lot in there. The big part, you have to set aside 10% of your enrollment for non-resident students. We're not exactly sure how that would work yet, but that's one you need to take a look at if you have not. 265 there has some changes to option 7, and it moved out of, I'm sorry, I haven't been telling you all where these are in the process. That one moved out of committee this morning. I'm sure you all are aware of the bills related to the 10 unpaid sick days, so we're not going to talk about that. Crown Act is back in a couple of different bills this year. It's made it out of the Senate before, I believe, but has never made it across the finish line. So we'll see if that makes any movement. So we're hitting the point now where we're into the bills that dropped this week, and there were literally hundreds of them. So we haven't talked about a lot of these a whole lot yet. But if you have questions, we can talk about them. There's 2 different bills, one in each chamber, on anti-Semitism. So kind of related to obviously things that are happening around the country right now. Senate Bill 338 is kind of an interesting one. We haven't, again, this is a new bill, so we haven't had a lot of conversations about how viable this is, but it would essentially mandate that districts have a way to communicate with students securely. So I think there are apps that a lot of districts use now to communicate with parents, so I'm not clear if that could be expanded to include students as well. Then I mentioned the constitutional amendments. There you see the Senate version drop this week. I think that, along with House Bill 2, are probably the ones to watch. Not really sure which one has more traction at this point, though. 336 there is one that just dropped and would require automatic enrollment in AP courses. We started having some conversations about that today. Not really sure where we're going to land on that one just yet. Then you see 377 there, that the local board can't appoint the superintendent as a secretary of the board. I'm not sure how common that is. So those are the Senate bills. Sorry, our 5-year-old just got home and is knocking on the door loudly. Let's move over to the House. So lots more House bills, obviously, because you got a lot more members. So there's House Bill 2. That's the House version of the constitutional amendment. It's pretty vague. It's not real prescriptive, so it's a little unclear what doors that could open if it were to pass out of the assembly and get ratified by voters. Jump down. So House Bill 119 there, I think is one that districts have already started to provide feedback to members on, but it would allow private school homeschool students to participate in athletic at public schools. 162 is over in the Senate now. This is Chair Tipton's numeracy bill. So if you remember, we got Read to Succeed done a session ago. This is his kind of follow-up to that. You can say hi. This is he's trying to do this essentially the same thing with math education that they did with early reading. So this bill's changed a lot over the course of its journey. Our initial thought was to not focus on the same grades that were impacted by Read to Succeed. So initially it focused on 4 to 8. The feedback from the field was, no, we want it to be K8. Okay, so then somehow it ended up being K3, and now I think it's back to K8 in the floor amendment. It's all over the place. Not sure it's going to go anywhere in the Senate this session, but I definitely think that the chairman will continue to have this conversation over the interim and continue to push until he gets this across the finish line. If you remember, Read to Succeed took a number of sessions to get done, so it's not surprising that something that this big, this important, will take a session or two to get done. So 227 is on the floor tomorrow. I think it's in the order of the day for tomorrow, but it does provide a merger process for contiguous school districts. So that's one, if you haven't looked at, you might want to take a look at. Sorry, I'm trying to some notes here. All right, so 275 and 300 are sort of opposite ends of the spectrum dealing with similar issues. So 275 is a repeat bill. It got out of the House last year and ran out of time in the Senate. It's back in the Senate now, so hopefully they will pick it up and do something with it this year. It's trying to close loopholes for that very small number of bad actors that are essentially moving districts and avoiding being held accountable in any of them. Again, we recognize that this is a very small minority of teachers. The vast majority of teachers are excellent and very concerned about their students' well-being. This is just trying to address that very small percentage and close those loopholes that allow that movement to happen. On the other side is House Bill 300. So this bill is trying to somewhat artificially speed up the process when a complaint is made against a teacher with the EPSB. Our concern with 300 is that those artificial timelines could lead to dismissals of very serious allegations for somewhat arbitrary timelines. And we understand no one wants these hanging over teachers' heads, but we also want to make sure that we're not dismissing cases that we don't have to dismiss simply because we didn't meet a given timeline. 304 is essentially a follow-up bill to Senate Bill 150 from last year that I know you all are familiar with. From the department standpoint, the only thing we're asking for in that space is some language around dual credit courses. So there's been some unintended consequences with 150 as it relates to dual credit courses that include human sexuality, biology, all those topics that were in that original bill. So we're asking for some language that would make sure that students that want to take those courses with parental permission or consent are able to do so. Let's jump down. 377 is kind of a fun one to talk about because we've been talking a lot about educator retention and recruitment over the past year or two. And in the House version of the budget, you saw that they put 2 new programs under KIA, not under the department, but under KIA. And 377 is just making some changes to that budget language. But those programs are a paid student teaching stipend. So there would be a way for students to get up to $5,000 during the semester that they student teach. And it also created a student loan forgiveness program for teachers. So both of those are in 377 as well as in the House budget. 387 is one that gets rid of the 64 college credit hour requirement for districts and would allow districts to lower that threshold to a high school degree. They don't have to, it's permissive. So districts that have a deep pool of substitute teachers right now with the stricter requirements are free to keep that if they would like to. But for districts that are struggling to get teacher substitutes, this could potentially help those districts. So 446 and 447 are a couple of the transportation bills that are moving. I think they're both in the orders of the day in the House tomorrow. 446 addresses student conduct on buses, and 447 allows for transportation in passenger vehicles. We've provided some feedback on both of these. I think we're in a pretty good place with the current versions. With the passenger vehicles in particular, we were real, concerned about having drivers that didn't have the same level of drug screening that CDL drivers have, making sure that the vehicles had an inspection plan in place, making sure that students aren't dropped off or in crossing the street because they don't have the same, arms and visibility that the buses do. And also just reminding folks that while we understand some of the transportation issues some districts have been facing this year, buses are the safest way to transport students. They're big, they're heavy, they're very visible. So that's where we are with those two. 464 is one that I'm sure that you all are interested in. That is the version that is currently moving that would codify the language that was in House Bill 678 from 2022. So that bill didn't call that whatever provisions that it put in place in a pilot, but they do sunset at the end of the fiscal year. So we do need legislation to pass and get to the governor for action this session if all the stakeholders want districts to still have the ability to do the construction projects in the way that 678 provided. So we've been working closely with the sponsor on that one, and hopefully we will see it get over to the Senate soon. And there's a kind of a version of it in a Senate bill that got filed a little later on, but 464 is probably our preferred vehicle at this point. Let's see. I know taking up a lot of time talking about these, so I'm trying to think about which ones to talk about. 571 is essentially asking the department to come up with a way to stagger out some of the required PD for teachers. 611 is one of the truancy bills. That's obviously been a big topic of conversation during this interim, is chronic absenteeism and truancy. So that's one of the bills that we've seen filed. So, one of the bills introduced to address that issue. And now we're into all the bills that are new, and so we don't have quite as much information on any of these, but I wanted to just make sure you all were aware that they're out there. 612 is Chair Tipton's anti-3 queuing system bill. 694, you probably heard about. It proposes one-time payments to school districts. 722 is one that I think is related to House Bill 108. Both of those are looking at English language learners. 108 was interested in how that relates to the accountability system. So we've been having some really good conversations with the sponsor and USAID and others about that, and some of the waivers that other states have gotten. And then 722 is kind of just addressing the supports that those students need. So anyway, for districts that have large ELL populations, those bills might be of interest. 748 makes a small change to the calculation that relates to SEEK, but we've taken a look at it. I don't think it's problematic. And now you're seeing how many bills got filed this week, by the way. These are all bills, these last couple of slides that dropped in the last few days. So some interesting ones. 828 has a mentoring component in it. That's one of the things that we've really been pushing hard on over the course of the interim. And as Robin came on board and we started having meetings with legislators back in the fall, we really talked a lot about the need for some version of KTIP and KPIP to come back. Unfortunately, didn't see that in the House budget, so I was happy to see it get introduced in this bill. No idea if it'll go anywhere, but I'm glad that it's out there, and there'll be a chance for people to talk about it. 800 would have us post, as the department, post district salary employee information on the website. 784 would allow residents to create an independent school district under certain circumstances. Sorry. 837 is kind of an interesting one in that it would allow schools or districts to utilize school property to be housed, to utilize for teacher housing, employee housing. So I'm not sure if that's trying to provide other options for recruitment and retention, but an interesting one. I haven't had a chance to talk to the sponsor about it, but I just wanted to mention it. All right, so in addition to the 800 and some odd bills that the House filed, there's a bunch of resolutions that are probably going to be of interest because they create a lot of task force this interim, almost all of which are being asked to provide reports to the LRC in December of this year. So, in addition to the early childhood and autism task force, you see another SEEK task force there. These are House resolutions. I'm not sure how much interest there is on the Senate side yet on these. I know we had a SEEK task force that just wrapped up a few sessions ago. So there's been talk about hopefully this group, if it were to come to fruition, would sort of pick up where they left off and not start all over again. There's that efficient and effective school district task force. There's actually a Senate version of that one So I would say that that's likely to get some traction. Then there's that red tape reduction task force. That's one they've talked about with us on and off over the last couple of sessions. There's that district consolidation task force that I thought you all might be interested in taking a look at. And then there's a homeschool task force, which I think we would be supportive of should it come to pass. That is the fairly fast version of the first 2/3 of the session. Obviously, there's a lot of legislation out there. Yeah, but if you have any questions, and I didn't do the budget update, I assume that at this point, pretty much everybody has heard what's in and not in the House version of the budget. Again, I think we'll see the Senate version probably mid-March. So sometime around the 15th, maybe a little before, maybe a little after, but I would say that's a pretty safe guess. At that, I'll be happy to try to field any questions or take down questions and get the appropriate staff to get back to you.
Anybody have any quick questions for?
I just have a comment.
Okay.
You know I'm gonna say something. I don't like that deal about all you need the high school diploma to substitute teach. That is just out of this crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what the heck do they do up there? Just sit and think about stupid stuff to put on there?
Politician. What do you?
I don't have any. I can't comment on that. However, I will point out that I think that this is the first interim and maybe the first session as well that I think we've heard members start to talk about the need to get the pendulum swinging back in the other direction as it relates to the professionalism of the profession, right? And so there was a lot of talk in committee about that bill in particular and about that issue, and the sponsor made a point of saying that's why it's permissive, right? And so districts that don't need to do it, frankly, probably shouldn't. But that those districts that are struggling with substitutes right now may want to consider it, at least in the short term. Representative Timoney out of Lexington made some really good comments, though, in the committee, to your point, saying that really the issue is the underlying issues are the ones we have to address, which are we need more people in the pipeline to become teachers. We need more people staying in the profession. And I thought they were just excellent comments. So if you have a chance, I'll try to find that and send it to that committee and send it to you all so you can scroll to the end and listen to Representative Timoney's comments, because they really were just spot on about the fact that with all those bills about the profession and potentially lowering any kind of standards, they're really missing the point of we've got to address the underlying cause of those bills.
There's enough said about the options to become a teacher, which I'm not crazy about all those options. But when that one came out and we had a meeting, and I'm going, that's crazy. That's like letting up. No, never mind.
Anybody else, real quick? Well, Brian, thank you so much as always.
Sure.
For this. We'll give you a little break now because we don't meet again until the summer, so you won't summer. So have a good rest of your evening and enjoy that.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Folks,
Thank you.
we're over time. Thank you again for being here. I really know, because she's told me, that Robin really appreciates your all's commitment to this group. And I think we've said this before, we made a really good decision when we decided to put these meetings attached to your all's regular meetings. And it's helped us a lot in terms of attendance, and we're looking forward to you all continuing this work. I'll watch from the sides, but you all can get things, the important things that you need to share with the commissioner, you can share with the commissioner. That won't change. Whenever we have a new commissioner, before I walk out the door, I'm going to say these people need your attention.
I want to thank you for.
Yeah. Thank you very much.